I've been considering recording and posting my thoughts on politics, philosophy, and the state of our country to YouTube for a while now. I've been hesitant due to fear of reprisal and due to the crab in a bucket nature that you can associate with the internet. However, after events unfolding during the Trump presidency, whom I did vote for, I feel the need to at least make a good faith effort to publish my ideas to the public forum so that I may say I did something during this turbulent time. If nothing truly ever happens, I need to at least speak out against what is currently happening in our country. Do not deceive yourselves. I am not about to launch into a tirade about how Trump is a tyrant or that we should have elected Kamala to continue degrading our culture and people into dust. Quite the opposite. I believe Trump hasn't gone far enough, and I fear he has become, or has always been, part of the establishment he claimed to oppose. Our country teeters on the edge, and I worry that the greed of our leaders, the complacency of conservatives, and the malicious self-hatred and tribalism of liberals is about to tear us apart or push us further toward ruin, and embracing the forces of entropy and chaos that have gripped us for so long. Therefore, I believe an honest discussion or rant on how I diagnose this country's problems is necessary in lieu of any other actions I can take. To start, let's first look at another country, which is very similar to ours and is in many ways our progenitor, the United Kingdom. They are currently suffering under a migrant crisis, the scales of which were warned against but were also consistently denounced as delusion. The central government there actively hides the crimes of foreigners living in the UK, while going as far as to persecute and incarcerate anyone who dares mention this, let alone speak out against it. Native English, Scottish, Irish, and Welsh culture is denounced as oppressive, while the culture of those not native to the country is held up as virtuous. The art and music there demoralize the population and teach them to hate themselves. The social programs there are dysfunctional, and foreigners are favored over the natives who live in their country. Meanwhile, the government will present itself as British, but actively pass policies that repress the very people who elected them to power. The keen observer will be able to see that what is happening in the United Kingdom right now is a more advanced form of what is happening in the United States. Fortunately, the British public is starting to realize that their government is an enemy of the people. Unfortunately, they are left with few recourses to resist other than protests, since their government has a monopoly on force that it can exercise with impunity. I pray for the people of the British Isles. I pray that they can triumph over this oppressive regime that keeps them down under the heel of their boots. Like I mentioned earlier, what is happening in the UK right now is a more advanced form of what is occurring in the United States. Only the government has an impetus to ensure that we do not know this, as the government here does not have a complete monopoly on force. It has only a majority share. However, if the American people organized, that majority share would be rapidly challenged. Therefore, it is in our government's best interest to keep us from organizing or even noticing. They distract us with partisan chicanery, bread and circuses in the form of professional sports in Hollywood, use the media to twist information or outright censor it without using formal government levers and tools that would otherwise violate the First Amendment. The government also numbs us into apathy by making available for mass consumption alcohol, prescription drugs, pornography, and other vices which plague the soul with sin. Further, they keep young people, those most likely to have the motive to seek change, occupied with subsistence by inflating the dollar, reducing its buying power, and ensuring we are too busy surviving to care what happens politically. Meanwhile, they pay organizations like Antifa and BLM to riot and make it seem like the opposition is already organized and violent, demoralizing any who are opposed to their debauchery. Though really, the only difference between the two is the presence of capital. They will even allow conservative pundits to pontificate on their views, to allow the illusion of free speech, but these pundits, despite massive audiences of people they can draw on, will never organize anything or make any moves to create real change, since either they are bought out by the government or their career is built off of criticizing the status quo. If that status quo were to disappear or change, they would need to offer up something more constructive rather than screaming into the ether for clicks. All this is to say what is happening in the UK is happening here. It is arguably more nefarious as well. Just recently, a large child slavery and trafficking ring was exposed in Omaha, Nebraska, though I would assume most have not heard of it, otherwise it would have garnered more outrage. Further, those hotels the ring operated out of are still in service despite exposure. It's worth noting that this ring was ran by illegals as well. There have been countless cases of violence against white people, burning and vandalism of churches, and harassment of Americans on the part of foreigners. These cases rarely make it above the level of local news at most, because we are not meant to see or notice it occurring. This compounded with the excesses of our central government during the glorified sham known as COVID, and the lack of response to the mass violence during the BLM riots, while simultaneously denouncing January 6th as an attempted coup of the government, shows who the government favors. They all favor foreigners, corporations, bankers, and the forces of Satan, chaos, and entropy that govern the left side of the political aisle, while neocons and neolibs are either in support of these or apathetic to these forces as well, so long as they can line their own pockets. Truly, we are dealing with an invasion of foreigners, supported by degenerates within our own ranks and our own government. This must be said. Conservatives, Americans, must realize what is on the line. Either we draw a line in the sand soon, or we face annihilation created out of our own complacency. Meanwhile, the corporations and financial institutions in our nation are also making moves. While the average age of home ownership continues to climb, corporations like BlackRock and Blackstone buy up properties not with the intent to sell them, but with the intent of renting them out, raising the cost of housing and reducing the rate of home ownership. Further, corporations lobby to keep programs like the H-1B visa program open and continue to lobby the government to continue illegal immigration into our country to undercut American wages. Then, to add insult to injury, the Federal Reserve Bank continues to print, or in many cases digitally create, dollars out of thin air, reducing the purchasing power of the dollar and impoverishing the population of our country, which is already dependent on reduced wages and salaries when adjusted for inflation. Whether you are a socialist, capitalist, moderate, or radical, it is undeniable that this rent-seeking behavior, lack of competition, and monetary manipulation is tyranny of the highest form, where the goal is to take from everyone and give to the few. Our corporatist economic model no longer benefits Americans, and is therefore also an enemy of the people. Abroad, we are simultaneously a pariah, spreading violence and destruction wherever our government deems fit, and we are also a source of free money and resources, so long as you launder some of it back to our politicians and corporations' pocketbooks. All the wars we have fought in the past century since World War I have been to the benefit of foreigners. We bankroll the world's ability to trade safely, yet reap none of its benefits, engaging in unequal trade constantly with foreign powers. We have impoverished living on our streets, and yet we see it fit to send foreign aid numbering in the billions or more overseas every year. All this must be put to an end. The military must be utilized to the benefit and defense of the American public, or not at all. Additionally, American tax money and any debts taken out against the American people must be for the direct benefit of the American people. Our foreign entanglements, especially outside the Western Hemisphere, must come to an end. Meanwhile, Americans are too busy debating whether men can be women and vice versa, whether the killing of infants in the womb is morally justifiable, and whether sexual debauchery and vice is something that should not only be tolerated, but allowed out in the public eye and allowed into spaces where children are taught. The fact that conservatives deem these as legitimate premises to be debated is absurd. These are debates that were had in the past and have already been decided. You don't need a religion to know every one of these is an intolerable refutation of nature, biology, and virtue. We are tolerating people who are selfish, narcissistic, and full of vice to preach to us. This has to end. To allow trans ideology is to attempt to deny what biologically makes a man and a woman. To allow killing of infants in the womb is to condone murder and deny the existence of the human soul. To treat sexual immorality as normal and natural is to deny the reproductive purpose of procreation, and profane marriage and the relationship between a man and a woman, instead reducing it to merely the pursuit of pleasure. There are reasons for the denunciation of these ideas, both in the Bible and in the line of virtue ethics. Further, these pointless quarrels distract us from the hijacking of America that is happening in front of our very eyes. Trump has done some to assuage these issues, but for every step forward, he takes multiple back, particularly in regards to our foreign entanglements, especially as it pertains to the Middle East. Mainly, his policy of deportations have been lackluster at best. Every president has deported fewer people than the previous administration for the last 20 or 30 years. Trump may break that mold, though deporting more people than President Biden is not saying much. Even then, Trump may not surpass the record he had after Obama. He continues to raise the debt ceiling, hasn't released many of the files he said he would, and has not gone after anyone in the political establishment with legal action, though they would have saw him in jail if it meant he lost the last election. Many say there is a plan. But if there was, why hasn't Trump acted covertly against his opponents, using the evidence he supposedly has? Unless something changes soon, I fear Trump has yanked America's proverbial chain. The Republican Party is not the answer to America's woes. It may be marginally better than the Democrats, but the Republican Party has not and will not successfully conserve anything. Much like all the Democrats progress is corruption and hedonism. Conservatives must start considering political alternatives. These alternatives must be to the benefit of the American people and nation, instead of necessarily adhering to any particular ideological orthodoxy. Therefore, a brief exploration of the nature of our republic would be fitting. Machiavelli, in his discourses on Livy, states that in order for a republic to function, it requires both a virtuous population and virtuous institutions. Further, unified culture and morality help greatly. America lacks all these things. It would be safe to say our republic has become defunct. Therefore, conservatives must seek to somehow restore that republic to a functioning state, or we have to consider ways it can be replaced. One will rapidly find that fulfilling either of these processes will not be pleasant for any of those involved. I do not exclusively know what this looks like, at least not yet. I can offer up some more information. The West has always been traditionally led by a combination of warrior elite and a priest class, who also constituted many of the intellectuals back then. The warrior elite gained legitimacy through victory in battle, defense of the realm, and enriching the state. The priest class tempered their worst sides by advocating for charity, reminding everyone of their moral duties to themselves and others, as well as ensuring the well-being of the everyman. This system worked pretty well for 1,000 years. But by secularizing and removing the military from the government, we have dropped both of these institutions in favor purely for rule by the merchants and lawyers. As a result, our bureaucracy and merchant-run organizations run amok and behave as though they are our rulers. I propose we need a different ruling class than the lawyers and merchants. They have had their chance, and they tended towards tyranny in 2.5 centuries. Regardless, we are living through a tumultuous time. The decisions we make now will reverberate throughout the ages and directly affect the lives of our offspring. The time for talk and thought is over. The issues of this age will be decided not by internet forums and passive voting, but by decisive action and organization. Thank you.